Greetings, 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 greetings. It is I, your King, King Clifford Jefferson, ascended of God through the fifth kind of man Jew, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem, on the reincarnation of King Edgar Peaceful, which we know as our Jesus Christ. It is May 6, 2024, which we know is in the Berber year 2974. I'm here on behalf of the English heirs and successors. I give honor to my queen, Sister Galveston from the House of Galveston. I give honor to my Archbishop Bell from the House of Belmont. I give honor to all my bishops, all my countesses, all those who are members, and all those who want to be members, to all the ancestors, uh, past, present, and as well as those who are going to be our predecessors in the future. I greet you under the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Yes, these principles are universal. All right. So this message for all those who misunderstand the story about the children of Israel, those who call themselves Jews. All right. This story was not to denote or not to uh, diminish anyone's faith or belief in who they believe in, but I just come to fulfill the law or make clear the law or uh, make it visible for you to see whatever it is that you claim to follow. All right. It's very important for you to understand that. All right. So this lesson is to clear up the history concerning us as the Anglo-Saxon Berbers and everybody who are trying to be associated with us as English people, Saxons, British, whoever you are. No, we are truly indeed the Anglo-Saxon people misnomer as English. All right. As we know, based upon the nationality, there are no English people alive here in what we call North America. All right. Even on the continent of Europe, all right, there are no English people. As a result of we know that under the English nationality, you have to go back into a time and era where the actual English people existed. We know that based upon the calendar, the only calendar that exists for the English people is that of the calendar that goes back to the English Regnal year of William the Conqueror. And we know William the Conqueror invaded England. You also know William the Conqueror was a northern Frankish king who descended down from the Robertinians, going back to the Carolingians, going back to the Merovingians, going all the way back to Clovis I, who was responsible for the Clovis culture. All right. So this is one is the disqualified gentleman who's been posted on our website, call himself an Englishman, and claim that he is the of English descent. When you go to this video called Jive Talk. Everyone goes to Jive Talk when you have a chance. He's specifically talking about the descendants of the Anglo-Saxon are of German, Nordic descent. Okay, when you look at him, his complexion or description or his characteristics is for lack of a better term, white. Okay, we are dark skinned Anglo-Saxon Berbers, as confirmed in Ray Ahmad versus Ahmad Hassad, which is a district court case in regards to the to validating the existence of one citizenship here in North America, not according to a genealogy or nationality, but according to a color of skin. All right, all those who claim to be uh, English descendant who migrated here not as English descendant, but as immigrants of Scottish descendant, known as Scottish Jews. Okay, we know that all those who immigrated here by way of the Religious Resettlement Act was allowed by the monarchs of Stuart. Now, if you're over in Europe, like the guy is, who's saying he's descended from Anglo-Saxon, well, you definitely need to watch this video because apparently you don't know what you're talking. Without further ado, let's get started with this marvelous lecture. We're not going based off what some person did or did a study on in the last 200 years. All right. We're not going based off that. We know, according to our story, that he who writes your book sets your timeline. Time never was when we were not. It's a life of time when we begin, the time will come when we will be no more. And if we let you tell our story or let people who do the research based off your comprehension tell our story, then the truth will never come out. All right? So this is for you. Once and for all. If you got any problems in regards to our concrete proof or crystal evidence that you're able to see. Because if you go to Jive Talk, dealing with Anglo-Saxon, you're reading or parakeeting something you read from a journal of somebody who did a study on it. All right. There's no scientific study that we see that's visible that we can make our decision. All right, in regards to your validity of what your presumption is about the Anglo-Saxon people. Right. Greetings, Count Assertion. All right. How is uh is it choppy? How's the audio? Wait for confirmation. Thank you very much. Okay, let's continue. Count Assertion, you're gonna really like this one. Right, you're really gonna like this one. Any questions, please let me know. Yeah, after yesterday, I went ahead and I got HP on the line and got that taken care of. Yes, got that taken care of. From this point on, we should be up and running. All right. Once again, I just want to show you how beautiful our ancestors is because we know that America got their start from Great Britain. When the Great Britain originated in 1707 as a result of the Union of the Crowns in 1503. Okay, and this was a result of the Treaty of Perpetual Peace between King James IV and Henry VII from the House of Tudors. All right, this is what I'm not just talking. I'm going to show you. All right, but you know, when you look at the story of these monarchs who who parakeeted or gave your story to you in what you call the Bible. You know what I'm saying? And these people walking around with the titles or the offices as lords. All right. So, and they're pretty much narrating the story for you to believe in as so-called children of God here on this planet. All right. Now we know this planet is a globe. When you see those kings holding a globe called the crucifer globus, that represents salvation of the cross, crucifer globus. All right. And it's a globe of the world, the whole world. Okay. So if we look at the world in 2024 under your calendar, and then the birth year is 2974, we see the majority of the world is suffering, but the foundation of the world is actually rooted in English history. Okay, I don't care what part of the world you go in, is rooted in English history. All right, it's rooted in English history, right? Because majority of the economy, is Germany, a majority of the finances, majority of the history, majority of the law is rooted in English history, what they call the common law of England. Okay? Common law of England. It's very important for you to understand that, to understand what I'm trying to do. Because we know that uh, when uh, when North America was under the authority of what we call the Spanish and the French crown called New Spain and New French. There were colonies here in North America before the immigration of those who came under the authority of the House of Stuart or those of Great Britain. Before they even came into existence, New Spain and New France was over here and the centralmost aspect of what we call North America, vibing. And these were colonies of New France or New Spain. And New France and New Spain goes back to a conflict that originated between the Capitan and the Plantagenet dynasty, as we know through the Capitan Plantagenet rivalry, which ended in the Treaty of Paris of 1259. Okay? Very important for you to understand this. All right. So now when we say this, we understand that from 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 the 100-Year War, all right, all the way up to the establishment of the 13 colonies by the House of Stuart, there was a gap or a missing of time of the English people and the English government, because England and Ireland and Scotland had their separate parliament, means they had their separate government. The government for England was called Witten or Wittenma. Okay, the authority that they used was called the Magna Carta, which goes back to time immemorial. It's not talking about the Magna Carta of 1215. The Magna Carta of 1215 comes from the original Magna Carta, which was just the custom and the ways of how we live, which going back to what we call time immemorial. All right. So when we look at this, where are the Anglo-Saxon Berbers? Because we know that the English read now here didn't come in till 1066. All right. 1066. So that means that all the people prior to 1066 are not English. They're Anglo-Saxon Berbers. And Anglo-Saxon Berbers are now being associated with other people who are not Anglo-Saxon Berbers. Because we know Anglo-Saxon Berbers are based off of characteristics of Afro-Asiatic descendants. All right. We know when we go back to the name Jefferson was found in Staffordshire, and Staffordshire is the county in Stafford, and Stafford was founded by Ethelfled, and we know the word burr or fort, burr or burr means fort, and we know Stafford was the fort that was created by Ethelfled, the daughter of Alfred the Great, and Elswith, which we know had darker complexion of skin like us, not like the Nordic white, fair skin with blonde hair, blue eyes. Very, 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 very important for us to understand that. So if that's the case, then that means that those heirs, our descendants, are not physically on this planet because they died out, but their genes or the genetics of these people are still here. All right. So the only way we got connected back to these genetics of our ancestors who are not here anymore, based upon our understanding, came through the teaching of your king, Clifford Jefferson, from the House of Plantagenet, descendant of Godfrey the Fifth Caliban Jew, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. Okay, that's the only way you got this information. Prior to that, this information was here, but the people weren't here. Yes, our physical bodies were here in this physical plane, which we call a biosphere, okay, or a sphere. We were here, but we're unconscious about who we were as we were here, as we see going back from the time we were born, going way back to our ancestors, our grandmother, our grandfather, our great grandmother, our great grandfather, our great great grandmother, our great great grandfather, and so on and so on and so on and so on. The status of these individuals was missing from the timeline because we had these names, as far as our understanding. So how come or how did the relationship of the people who got these names get separated from the people who established a body of politics based off these surnames, where the name originated from? Okay, we know that the word Berber originated from London. We know London, reference to a place, is found in two places. It's found in either Berkshire and is also found in Fife or Fife before, all right, which is in Scotland. Okay, and we know that the movie Roots, going back to Kente, the word Kente is found in Kent. We know Kent is a settlement that was established by the Kingdom of Kent, going back to Ethelbert of Kent. We know that Ethelbert of Kent was the predecessor for King Alfred the Great, who were the kings of Wessex, okay? And under the Domes Law, under what we call the Domes Book, he created what they call the Law of Judgment, which was the incorporation of Ophir, what we call Anita Wessex, as well as Ophir Mercia, as well as the Mosaic Code. Okay, all these he adopted through what we call the English Benedictine Reformation, which was a continental reform or a cosmopolitan reform or a universal reform. All right, we must understand that to understand where I'm going with it. All right, so as a result of that, that means that the Anglo-Saxon Berbers are not in this world. Their ancestors, their descendants are in this world, but their consciousness about who their ancestors were are not in this world. So it took them our mental perception, all right, which means that our ancestors from outside of this spirit, outside of this, what we call time and space, and have embedded in our DNA the ability for us to be able to incarnate, all right, to personify, all right, to incorporate the laws of our ancestors who were here on this planet, but now I have transfigured or transformed onto the higher plane. But the information that they had that was here is still preserved. All right. And it took the ancestors who at one time didn't know this information as a result of our ability to not be able to read and write, to learn this information, to put us back in link on that frequency or on that ether plane with our ancestors so that we would be on the same level of understanding. So I mean that, yes, the Anglo-Saxon Berbers have returned. So think of it like a snow globe, right? A snow globe where we're not in the snow globe, we're outside of the snow globe, and we're looking at holding the snow globe, and we're looking at our ancestors who, in the physical form, unconscious about who we were when we were gods on the in that snow globe. So that meant that our ancestors who are not in that snow globe now have descendants in that snow globe that are conscious about who they are, and the information that's in that snow globe is there that they do not know is there because it's being hidden by those who trying to imitate the people in that snow globe, which is actually the English or Anglo-Saxon Berbers who are now past and gone, but the spirit lives on. All right, the spirit lives on. It's called cellular lineage. It's in your DNA. All right. How I know it? They knew better enough to preserve it. Let's get to it. (1911) Encyclopedia of Britannica. So nice and slow for y'all. Nice and slow. So there's no way you can miss this. But you know I got to get my call. So hold back. 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica. All right. About the Berbers. We are Anglo-Saxon Berbers, misnomered as English, and this is a result of William the Conqueror invaded England and coming up what we call English, or the term English. We know the word English is used to separate us from the Saxons. All right, that's what the word used for. We were not actually English; we were Anglo-Saxon Berbers. Okay, Berbers, the name under which are includes various branches of indigenous Libyan races from North Africa since the dawn of history. The Berbers have occupied tracts between the Mediterranean and the Sahara from Egypt to the Atlantic. The origin of the name is doubtful, okay? Some believe it to be derived from the word barbarians, which we know barbarians associated with those Frankish, Nordic, Visigoth descendants, employed first by the Greeks and later by the Romans, because we know that Londonwick and Londinium was separated from the London Wall. All right, we know that the Romans who invaded Britain came or are tied to what we call Constantinople, the Byzantine Empire, the Ottoman Empire, which we know are the Roman Catholics, who goes back to what we call, or who are under what we call the Pope. All right, very important. Other attribute the first use of the term to Arab conquerors, because that's who the so-called Crusaders were at war with, the conquerors, Arab conquerors. All right. However, this may be a tribal name. Barbara and Barata appear in Egyptian inscriptions of 1700 to 13,000 BC. All right. And the Berbers were probably intimately related with the Egyptians in very early times. Thus, the true ethical name may have become confused with Barbary, the designated naturally used by classical conquerors. All right, by classical conquerors. To the Egyptians, I'm not going to be on it. I'm not even going to read that. Let me just put that over. I already read this, but I want to get this as a as a pivotal. All right. Africa or the Africa is in ancient time occupied the coastland near Carthage, and some scholars derive the word Africa from their name. See Africa and Rome. So most of the research that's been done by people is based off their own research and their own understanding and their own comprehension of what it is that they were uh, um, had been what we call exposed to. All right. But it's not for those who the information was exposed to, it's not, they're not those people in regards to the information that was exposed to them. The information that was exposed to them is about those people who they are not. Okay. We are those people who the information that was exposed to those who write these theories about these us. All right. Very important for you to understand that. The antiquity of their type is evidenced by the monuments of Egypt, where the ancestors are pictured with the same comparatively blonde features, all right? Everybody trying to live our history, which many of them still display, all right? They're talking about Egyptians. We're not Egyptians. The Aborigines of the Canary Islands, the Guanches, would seem almost certainly from the remains of their language to have been Berbers. But the problem of the actual origin of the Berbers race has not yet been solved. Now, this is the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica from 1798, okay? From 1798. In spite of history of foreign conquest, Phoenicians, Greeks, Romans, Vandals, Arabs, and French. When we say French, we're talking about French descent. French, talking about the Carolingians, Merovingians, all those descended down from Clovis I, who never claimed to be descendants of God like the Anglo-Saxon people. Okay? Very cool, very important you understand that. So it says, in spite of the history of the foreign conquest, Phoenician, Greeks, Romans, Vandals, Arab, French, the Berbish physical types, and the Berbish temperament and nationality have resisted since the Stone Age. All right, existed to the Stone Age. So even though we've been conquested, all right, people have came by way of acquisition, by way of what we call conquest, by way of what we call discovery. We still exist in this present day. Why? Because we are Anglo-Saxon Berbers. When did you ever hear the term Anglo-Saxon Berbers by anybody other than the third tip English Church of England? You didn't. You never heard it. You hate it. You're punch up. You're going to hear it now, though. You're about to hear it now. The numerous invasions have naturally introduced a certain amount of foreign blood among the tribes fringing the Mediterranean, but those farther inland have preserved their racial purity in a surprising degree. All right? In a surprising degree. Though considerable individual differences of type may be found in every village, all right, the Berbers are distinctly a white race, and the majority would if clad in European customs passed unchallenged as Europeans. All right, we know in Ray versus Hassan disqualified that white race does not denote to genealogy testing on the ethnicity testing. It's just based off the color of the skin. All right, that's clear. So, brother Englishman, if you're watching this, if you're trying to associate yourself with the Anglo-Saxon race based off the color of skin, you're disqualified. All right. Dark hair and brown hazel eyes are the rule. All right, are the rule. Blue-eyed blind blue-eyed blondes are found, but their frequency have been considerably outstated. The invaders who have most infected the Berbers race are the Arabs, but the two races with a common religion, often a common government with the same tribal grouping, have been failed to amalgamate to any great extent. This fact has been emphasized by Dr. R.G. Latham, who writes, all that is not Arabic in the kingdom, all that is not Arabic in the kingdom of Morocco, all right? All that is not Arabic in French provinces of Algeria, and all that is not Arabic in Tunis, Tripoli, and Fez is broken, okay? Once and for all. 1911 Encyclopedia, which we're going to get into in a second. The explanation lies in profound distinction of characteristics, all right? The Arab is a herdsman and a nomad. The Berber is an agriculturist and a townsman. The Arab has built his social structure on the Quran, which inculcates absolutism, aristocracy, and theocracy. The Berber, despite his nominal Mohammedanism, is a democrat with his Jimna called Written and his Qanun or unwritten code, the Magna Carta. These are Anglo-Saxon terms. Written Hello? Hello? Yes, who am I speaking? No, I was trying to click. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that call. Otherwise, I'd be in my promises. Greetings, Sister Harris from the House of Harris, Countess Harris. Good to see you. Income. So that means that the Berber Democrat government was called Wittemont or the unwritten code, the Magna Carta of the individual liberties as opposed to the community's good. So it was the unwritten code of the Magna Carta, not the written code of the Magna Carta. We know that the Magna Carta goes back to the dispute they had with the royal barons of the Parliament of England, okay, which we discussed in my last video. Okay, now why is it important that the Berbers had a democratic government called Wittemont in an unwritten code called the Magna Carta? Why did this encyclopedia of Britannica associate the Berbers with the Magna Carta and Wittemont? Everyone should be scratching their head right now. So that means we need to further investigate this 1911 encyclopedia. So we can qualify and validate if the one who's telling this, giving this narrative is presumptuous or concrete. All right? Is this proof? Because we know it's proof that according to prior to 1066, there was no English regnal king. There was only Berber kings ruling from 1065 all on back. There was only Berber kings ruling. And if the Berber kings were ruling and there was no English regnal year, then that means that the government that was there prior to the English regnal year was that of the Wittemont and the Magna Carta. I'm talking about the one in 1215, but before the 1215 Magna Carta, because Magna Carta was established by John as a Plantagenet crown, and Wittemont was established by the kings of Wessex. All right? Was established by the kings of Wessex. And we know Wittem means wise men. We know wise men means counsel. All right? So we're going to discuss that as well. But we want to get into the proof with this 1911 Britannica about the Berbers. So let's get into some genetic testing about the Berbers, whose government, as we just read here from the 1911 Encyclopedia of Britannica, that was founded in where? Edinburgh, Scotland. Okay, not in Harvard, not in or any other college here, because the oldest two is what we call Oxford and what's the other college? Oxford College and Cambridge, not Oxford, Oxford, Cambridge, and Oxford and Cambridge. Those are the oldest two colleges. All right, so let's get down to it. Let's get to some scientific proof. National Library of Medicine, National Center of Biotechnology Information. Now, whoever that guy from Englishman, you was reading from something. We never seen it. And it was a paper based off of thesis by somebody who did a study on it. All right. These are people actually working in the lab. All right. And look what they say. Genetic characterization. We talking about character, right? We just read it in there and in the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica. Genetic characterization of the origin of Tunisian birth. All right, very important because we know that. One second, Coco. We know that Louis the Ninth, who signed the Treaty of Paris in 459, who also disqualified those both barons by the provision of Oxford, as a result of uh, uh, the Simon de Montfort and Fitz John Godfrey, who my surname can be found on the document called the Provisions of Oxford, which was denounced by Louis the Ninth. All right, and Louis the Ninth was a Frankish king at that. All right, a Frankish king from the Capetine dynasty. All right, founded by the House of Capet, who descended down from the Carolingians and the Merovingians. All right, how many of us know this? Abstract. Blood sample from 120 Tunisian Berbers of Galila village were typed for GM and KM immunoglobulin allotype, alpha 1 antitrypsin variants, and ABO blood groups. The result was compared with those of other Berber groups. To combine data considered in light of sociological, historical, and paleontological data, okay? When we talk about skulls and things of that nature, support the hypothesis that the Berbers are native to North Africa and their ancestors. The first modern man, Homo sapiens of North Africa, were the founders of the European population. The ancestors of the Berbers could have been an intermediate population between Homo sapiens from Europe and from South Africa. Okay? We know that the word Berber associated with people originated in where? London. We know London only originated in two places, Berkshire and Firth. And we know Alfred the Great grew up in what? Berkshire, right? We know Alfred the Great wife was Ealdwith, we can clearly see the characteristics of dark skinned, and their daughter was Ethelfled, who was the founder of Staffordshire, and Staffordshire is where my surname Jefferson comes from, which is a surname linked to the Plantagenet account. Okay? Godfrey the Fifth Caliban Jew, whose father is Folk the Fifth, ruler of Jerusalem. All right? He was ruling as a Berber. The Ninth Crusade that took place with Louis the Ninth and Edward the First of the Plantagenet ground was dealing in Tunisia. This is an abstract based upon the genetic proof of the characterization of the founders of the European continent from Tunisia. All right? Tunisia, the capital city is Tunis. All right? How many people can bring this concrete proof to them? All right? So let's move forward. Encyclopedia Britannica. Got to check your sources. Everyone see the Scottish thistle. Everyone see the Scottish thistle. All right. not a red rose, not a white rose, not an eagle. All right, a thistle, all symbolic. The Encyclopedia Britannica, Latin for British Encyclopedia. So this is not an English encyclopedia. This is a British encyclopedia. And a British encyclopedia is a general knowledge English language encyclopedia. Now, how many of you know about what general knowledge is? Let's see. Hold on. I just showed that. Yeah, this is. What is general knowledge? General knowledge is information that has been accumulated over time through various media and sources. It excludes specialized learning that can only be obtained with extensive training and information confined to a single medium. General knowledge is an essential component of crystallized intelligence and is strongly associated with general intelligence and with openness to experience. Okay? Very simple. All right? Common sense. Okay. So the Encyclopedia Britannica, British Encyclopedia, is a general knowledge English language encyclopedia and has been published by the Encyclopedia Britannica Incorporation Company since 1768. All right. That's all I'm concerned about. Since 1768, this Encyclopedia Britannica or British Encyclopedia of General Knowledge was created by by what we call the Encyclopedia Incorporated Company. All right. So let's check that source. I'll wait for everybody to get there. Greetings, Archbishop Belmont from the House of Belmont. Good to see you. Okay. Encyclopedia Britannica Incorporated is a company known publishing the Encyclopedia Britannica, the world's oldest continuously published encyclopedia. The company also owns the American Dictionary, which you call the Merriam-Webster, and though historically British, is now based in Chicago of the United States of America. So this Encyclopedia Britannica company, which was founded in Edinburgh, Scotland, is now over here in America in Chicago, Illinois. Okay? The encyclopedia that was founded in Edinburgh, who wrote that the founders of the European race were Berbers of Anglo-Saxon Berber descent. All right? And their government was called written, and the code of law or unwritten code of law was called the Magna Carta. I didn't write this. They wrote it. They wrote it. Let's see why they wrote it. Are y'all ready for this? Okay. History of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Founded in Edinburgh, Scotland, now located in Chicago, Illinois. All right. History of the Encyclopedia Britannica, or the British Encyclopedia. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Uh, it's been minutes since I heard from you, brother. Uh, uh, Give me a second. I got a brain freeze. All right, here we go. History of the Encyclopedia Britannica. The company was founded in Edinburgh, Scotland in the 18th century during the historical period termed the Scottish Enlightenment. Anybody ever heard of the Scottish Enlightenment? All right. So the Enlightenment of the Scottish people were apparently aware of the of the Berber history. All right. They were apparently aware of the British history and the association of the Berber history with the government of Wittenman and the uncoded laws of the Magna Carta. Okay. The Scottish knew that, and this is the Scottish Enlightenment. And we know that the encyclopedia was created in what year? 1768. But let's look at the Scottish Enlightenment now, because it said the company was founded in Edinburgh, Scotland, in the 18th century during a historical period termed the Scottish Enlightenment. All right? So we ain't got to look no further. Let's look about greetings, Bishop Murphy. Greetings, CA. Told you had a brief brain freeze, but greetings, no. The company was founded in Edinburgh. We know bird means fort. All right? Eden's fort in Scotland is the 18th century during the historical period term, the Scottish Enlightenment. So let's look at the Scottish Enlightenment because we know we were ruled over in North America under the Commonwealth of England, under what we got now called a republic, by Scottish monarchs under the authority that they call the Scottish Parliament. All right, during the unification of England and Parliament through the unification of the Crown and the Treaty of Union of 1707. All right, very important to understand that. So what's the Scottish Enlightenment? Scottish Enlightenment. Scottish Enlightenment was a period in the 18th and 19th century in Scotland, characterized by an outpouring of intellectual and scientific accomplishment. By the 18th century, Scotland had a network of private schools and Scottish law lands and 5 universities. Right? The Enlightenment culture was based on close readings of new books and intense discussions which took place daily at such intellectual gatherings places in Edinburgh, at the Select Society and later the Poker Club, as well as within Scotland's ancient universities, St. Andrew, Glasgow, Edinburgh, King's College, and Marshall's College. Let's get to the background. The Scottish Enlightenment had effect far beyond Scotland. Did you hear that? The Scottish Enlightenment, this happened in the 18th century, had effects far beyond Scotland, not only because of the esteem in which Scotland's achievements were held outside of Scotland, but also because of its ideas and attitudes that were carried all over Great Britain and across the Western world as part of the Scottish what's called diaspora, and by foreign students who studied in Scotland. Did y'all hear that? All right, now we talk about the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica, or the British Encyclopedia, and how they described or gave characteristics to the Berbers associated with the government of the kings of Wessex called Wittenman and the legal law governed by what they call the Codes of Magna Carta, which we know goes back to the Plantagenet crown, John, son of Henry II, son of God, the fifth count of Van Jew. All right, and that was the written Magna Carta. They talking about the uncode of the Magna Carta. All right, associated with the Bourbons, not English kings, but Berber kings, because the first English renowned king didn't come until 1166 with William the Conqueror, who invaded England. It wasn't called Great Britain; it was called England. All right. Scottish Enlightenment had effects far beyond not only because of the esteem in which Scottish achievements were held outside of Scotland, not in Scotland, but outside of Scotland, but also because of its ideas and attitudes were carried all over Great Britain and across the Western world as part of the Scottish uh, diaspora and by foreign students who study Scotland. Are there any questions? Background. Union with England in 1707 meant the end of the Scottish Parliament. Did you hear that? We're talking about the Treaty of Union in 1707. Marked the end of Scottish Parliament because prior to 1707, England had their own parliament going back to what we call the Magna Carta, which was preceded by Witten or Wittenma. All right. The parliamentarian politicians, the aristocrats, and placements moved to London. The Scottish law remaining entirely separate from English law, so the civil law, courts, lawyers, and jurists remained in Edinburgh. The headquarters of the leadership of the Church of Scotland also remained, as did the universities, the medical establishments, the lawyers, and the divines, together with the professors, intellectuals, medical men, scientists, architects formed the new middle class elites that dominated urban Scotland and facilitated the Scottish Enlightenment. All this was due to Scottish this diaspora due to Scottish Enlightenment, which all happened in the 18th century, which recorded in the Encyclopedia Britannica or the British Encyclopedia in regards to that which was before the Scottish Enlightenment or the Scottish diaspora in regards to carrying what they learned in the Western world that was actually put in that darn encyclopedia. All right. Does that make sense to everybody? Of course it does. All right. So what is the Scottish diaspora? Very important to understand that. Let me make sure I didn't miss it. Scottish diaspora. The Scottish diaspora consists of Scottish people who immigrated from Scotland and their descendants. The diaspora is concentrated in countries such as the United States, Canada, Australia, England, New Zealand, Ireland, and to the lesser extent, Argentina, Chile, and Brazil. The Scottish diaspora has been estimated by the Scottish government to be between 28 to 40 million people worldwide. Did you hear that? So what part of the Scottish diaspora, which is part of the Scottish Enlightenment, which was based upon what they talked about in regards to what they learned prior to their flight, okay? Prior to their flight, because they were subject to subjectivity, right? They were slaves of the king. These were called the Jews. They were considered your Scottish Jews, the one who were expelled from England. We're gonna validate all this, right? You go to each country, we go to the United States. Scottish, the 1700s. In the 1700s, y'all, we know that the Scottish diaspora and the Scottish Enlightenment came about in the 18th century. The same time. And they associate that with Scottish Americans. Scottish Americans are Scottish descendants who took place in the Scottish diaspora. All right, what you're reading about. Let's go to Scottish Americans. Scotch Americans or Scot Americans are Americans whose ancestors originated wholly or part in Scotland. Scots Americans are closely related to Scot-Irish Americans, descendants of Ulster Scott. Did we hear that? Do y'all hear that? Do y'all understand that? Significant immigration from Scotland to America began in the 1700s and accelerated after the Jacob Rising of 1745. The steady degradation of a clan structure and the highland clearance. Did you hear that? So all this is going on in the 18th century, all right? But yet in the 18th century, they got an encyclopedia, and we go up to the Anglo-Saxons, who they're calling Berbers. And we know Berber originated in where? London. And London is the name of a place that originated in two places, Berkshire and Firth. We know Firth is in Scotland and Berkshire is in England. And we know Berkshire is where Alfred the Great descended down from, right? And we know Alfred the Great wife was Elizabeth, and Elizabeth was clearly a dark-skinned woman based off her character, Richard, who was the daughter of Ethel, whose daughter was Ethelfled, which was the founder of Staffordshire. And we know Staffordshire is where the surname Jefferson descend down from. Okay, these are straight facts. All right, so we see the Scottish Americans also originated in the 17th century. Why is this important, everyone? Regions with significant population: New England, Appalachian Mountains, Deep South, New York, Massachusetts, West Virginia, Idaho, North Carolina, Florida, California, and Pennsylvania. Here now. Okay, so we know the Encyclopedia of Britannica, or the British Encyclopedia of Britannica, was found in Edinburgh. All right, found in Edinburgh, Scotland. All right, and that came about through what they said the Scottish Enlightenment, which brought forth the Scottish diaspora. You know what I'm saying? Which brought forth what we call Scottish Americans, colonized what we call North America, all in the same time era around the 18th century. Okay, 17th, 18th century. So let's look at the history of Jews in Scotland. All right, because it will be fitting. You know I am, Countess Cersei. History of the Jews in Scotland, because that's what we're talking about. We know that book, the Encyclopedia of Britannica, or the British Britannica, which was a book associated with the Scottish, and we know there was Scottish king from Great Britain. We know Great Britain came about in what? 17th century, 1707. They came about through what? The Union of the Crown in what? 1503. And that resulted from what we call the Treaty of Perpetual Peace in 1502. And that would get King James IV and Henry VII from the House of Tudors, who conquered England through the War of the Roses. Man, y'all better stop messing with me. Y'all better stop messing with me. The history of the Jews in Scotland goes back to at least where? The 17th century. It is not known when Jews first arrived in Scotland. We're going to tell you when they arrived in Scotland in 1066, because those Jews were William the Conqueror and his debaters, who now call themselves English, because we're not English and for a true identity, because English actually denotes for a distinction between Anglo and the Saxon. We know Anglo and English and Anglo and angel are all the same word, and it means simply messenger. All right. The history of the Jews in Scotland goes back to at least the 17th century. Not going based off of the abstract book that you read about in your Bible, because that Bible was written by those abstract deities who call themselves Lord, such as King James I, King James II, Charles I, Charles II, Queen Anne, all of them. All of them were a part of the Order of the Garter, which was established by Edward III, the son of Edward II, the son of Edward I, who expelled the Jews from Scotland to the Scottish independence in 1290. Yes, we're going to get into it today, y'all. All right. It says here, the history of the Jews in Scotland goes back to at least the 17th century. It's not known when the Jews first arrived in Scotland. This goes back to the Stone of Scone, or British Israelism. We talked about that already. But the earliest concrete, you hear that word, y'all? Y'all like to sound that word, concrete? It said concrete, not abstract. It said the concrete historical reference to Jewish presence in Scotland being from the late 17th century. Most Scottish Jews today are Ashkenazi background who mainly settled in Edinburgh, then in Glasgow in the mid 19th century. Now, Edinburgh is where that darn encyclopedia came from, all right? And it was in Scotland where it was originated from, which told the story about those prior to Scotland or those Jews even getting there. All right, even before they getting there. Let's read. Let's get into it. So it says the history of the Jews go back to at least the 17th century and is not known when the Jews first arrived in Scotland. While the earliest concrete historical reference to the Jewish presence in Scotland being from the late 17th century. So the only evidence or the proof that they got in regards to Jews in Scotland is from the late 17th century. All right. Most Scottish Jews today are Ashkenazi, all right, background who mainly settle in Edinburgh. So that means that these Ashkenazi Jews, hence the word Nazi. You see that word Nazi, y'all? At the end of it, most Scottish Jews today are of Ashkenazi background who mainly settle in Edinburgh. So that means that they migrated. They migrated. So let's look at Ashkenazi. Who are these Ashkenazi Jews? And I'm making up. I'm only come to fulfill the law, not to change it. Ashkenazi Jews, also known as Ashkenazi Jews or Ashkenazim, constitute a Jewish diaspora population that emerged in the Holy Roman Empire around the end of the first millennium CE, Christian era. They traditionally spoke Yiddish and largely migrated toward Northern and Eastern Europe during the late Middle Age due to persecution. Hebrews were prominently used as a literary and sacred language until the 20th century revival as a common language. Etymology. The name Ashkenazi derives from the biblical figures of Ashkenaz, the first son of Gomer, son of Japheth, son of Noah, and Japheth's patriarch in the Tables of Nations, Genesis 10. The name Gomer has been linked to the Cimmerians. All right, that's an abstract story. That's not concrete. All right, that's an abstract story. So all those who making a connection off this abstract story, you know who you say you are. This guy is abstract. Rashi uses Leshan Ashkenaz or Ashkenazi language to describe Yiddish, and Byzantinium and Syrian Jewish letters refer to the Crusaders as Ashkenazim, given the close link between the Jewish community of France and Germany following the Carolingian unification. The term Ashkenazi came to refer to the Jews of both medieval Germany and France. Did y'all hear that? Did you hear that? So the Ashkenazi Jews are associated, according to Rashi, all right? He described the Yiddish and Byzantinium and Syrian Jewish letters, referred to them as the Crusaders. And we know the Crusaders goes back to the Crusades, and the Crusades goes back to what we call the Kingdom of Jerusalem. And the Kingdom of Jerusalem was founded by Godfrey V, kind of what we call Godfrey of Bouillon. And Godfrey of Bouillon was the son of Eustace II, who married Golda of England, who was the daughter of Ethelred the Unready, who was the son of our Jesus Christ. We know that Godfrey of Bouillon was a Frankish king who was responsible for the Order of the Holy Sepulchre, which was the order as well as the Knights Templar, the Knights, the Hospitaliters, and every other order in that manner was something to we call the Roman Catholic Church, all getting their instructions from the Pope. This is why after Godfrey of Bouillon, who never wore never wore a crown because of Jesus wore a crown of thorns. That's symbolic of the crown of thorns, which was found to be in the hands of what we call Godfrey de Charny. And Godfrey de Charny was part of the Knights and Templars, right? And Godfrey de Charny was affiliated with Louis IX. And Louis IX is affiliated with the Shroud of Turin, which was supposed to be the burial cloth, which was the proof of the DNA of Jesus' ascension, as well as Jesus' bloodline, which they associated with the Golden Grail. And we know that goes back to the Shroud of Turin, and the Shroud of Turin is associated with the Berbers. All right, you got it. This is like crazy. So it says that the Ashkenazi Jews are referred to as the Crusaders. All right, and it said to give close link between the Jewish communities of France and Germany following the Carolingian unification. Everybody know what the Carolingian unification is? How many of y'all know about the Carolingian unification? Let's see. The Carolingian Empire was a Frankish dominated empire in Western Central Europe during the early medieval age. It was ruled by the Carolingian dynasty, which had ruled the kings of France since 751 and as kings of Lombard in Italy from 774. In 800, the Frankish king Charlemagne was crowned emperor of Rome. So they're all family. They're all family. This links down to the Capetine dynasty, which goes back to the war they had with the Plantagenet dynasty, where all the descendants of the Godfrey fifth Caliban Jew, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. Because we know the kingdom of Jerusalem, founded by Godfrey of Bouillon, successors was Baldwin the First, Baldwin the Second, and who succeeded Baldwin the Second? Folk the Fifth. Okay? Folk the Fifth. This all goes back to the anarchy, all right? The anarchy or the white shit, all right? Or the Treaty of 1153, called the Treaty of Abbeville. How many of you know about that? Nobody. Let's talk about it. So we see that the Ashkenazi Jews are associated or affiliated with the Crusaders, which are affiliated with the Carolingians, who are the Merovingians. We also know that the Ashkenazi Jews migrated to what we call Scotland, all right, and what they call Edinburgh, all right. And Edinburgh is where the Encyclopedia Britannica was created due to what we call the Scottish Enlightenment or the Scottish this diaspora, which came about through their migration, all right. And this in the 18th century. But something happened prior to the 18th century to cause this diaspora or to cause the Scottish Enlightenment to come to fruition as a result of what already existed prior to that fruition that they got from this so-called Enlightenment. Okay? Wherever you are also, Duro, you got to speak English here because we English Anglo-Saxon people. If you claim to be English, then why are you speaking English? What's questo asinio non e re? That's not a language we speak. Okay, so if you can't speak our language or ask intelligent questions, please stay off our platform. History of Jews in Scotland. And the first history of the Jews in Scotland was in Edinburgh. All right? It's a fact. All right? Straight fact. Let's look at the history of the Jews in England, because the history of the Jews in Scotland comes about in the 18th century, migrating to what they call Scotland. But Scotland has a history prior to that migration of those Ashkenazi Jews that goes back to what we call Israel today, because the proof of it is the six-pointed star, which is the badge they used to wear. All right, we're gonna prove it. Let's talk about it. Let's go to the history, the concrete history. Brother also Duro, look at this. Please listen to this, whoever you are. I think you the one got a gorilla face on your chat face. Gorilla. Also Duro. Don't know who that is. But let's continue. The first Jews to arrive in England arrived after the Norman conquest of the country with William the Conqueror. All right? Did you hear that? The first Jews in England arrived after the Norman conquest of the country by William the Conqueror in 1066. This is the English reading out year. Prior to that, the only reading out year. Let's just prove it. Don't worry about him. We're gonna show him who the real donkey is. Hee haw. Don't worry about him. That's gonna allow the what they call the algorithm to go off. So don't even worry about him. He's upset apparently with the proof. He's upset. Don't get mad at me. Call everybody else who put this up here donkeys. 1066. 5. All right. The year 1065 and the Gregorian year. And we know the Gregorian year was established until 1582 by Pope Gregory the 13th. And he descended down from Pope Gregory the First, who had all the Anglo-Saxon Berbers convert to Christianity, which is why we use your calendar today. All right. Is there an English reading out year on there, Mr. Oso Duro? No. All right. So William the Conqueror must have been a Jew, just like you. All right. You the one who crucified Savior, crucified our Savior, which I've now resurrected as the Savior, as King Edgar the Peaceful. So yes, I am a king. Do you know what a king is? A king is a station, a position, or office. It's not a human being. It's a human being sitting in the office, in that office that's immortal. Oh, okay? You must understand that. Apparently you don't. That represents the crown. The crown is the corporation's soul. You full of laugh. All right. You see, the Berber year is 2015, and the English Biennial year is not applicable. Okay? It's not applicable. So the only calendar that we can use is the Berber calendar. Ain't no English calendar in existence until we're in the conquer. All right? So how are you English people? When you calendar ain't even in existence there. The only calendar you can use is the Gregorian calendar. All right? So I'll rest on that. Let's go back to England and Scottish history in England. We wanted to shut him down because he don't want us to teach this. The first Jews in England arrived after the Norman conquest of the country by William the Conqueror. In 1066, no one responded to that fool. In 1066 is the first written record of Jewish settlement in England, dating from 1070. Jews suffered massacres in 1189 to 1190, and after a period of rising persecution, all the Jews were expelled from England after the Edict of Expulsion in 1290. Did you hear that? All the Jews were expelled from England in 1290. They never said nothing about no Great Britain, all right, at all. The Jews were expelled in 1290 by Edward I. We know the first entry of the Jews came with William the Conqueror in 1066. And prior to 1066, were no English people. It was only Berber kings. All right. So the Jews that came to Edinburgh in the 18th century are the same Jews that we see here and the Edict of Expulsion in 1290. Why? Because of the Battle of Dunbar, right? The Battle of Dunbar had two battles in Dunbar in 1296 and through the time of the English Commonwealth, other Commonwealth. And what was it? What was the year? 1650. All right, we ain't even getting to that yet. We're going to talk about it. So the Jews were expelled in 1290. All right. Edward I is also identified as internationally significant as the first monarch to attempt state-sponsored conversion to permanently exclude Jews from his kingdom, and the first English monarch to use anti-Semitism as an instrument of state policy. Now we see this because we know when the Ninth Crusade, Edward I took over the Eighth Crusade, over the Ninth Crusade as a result of the Eighth Crusade, when Louis IX died as a result of that disease that fell down, that came about. All right, we see that the explosion and surrounding events also led to the formation of strong strain or anti-Semitism within the English identity that outlasted the period, including the idea that England was unique precisely because of it did not include Jews. All right, yeah, that brother mad, he's upset. Let's read, y'all. We're still talking about Oscar Nazi Jews who migrated to Great Britain. All right. Prior to that, it was not called Great Britain. It was called Albion. All right. Where King Edgar was emperor of Albion. All right. William I. We know who William I is, right? William the Conqueror. There is no record of Jews in England before the Norman Conquest in 1066. The few references to Jews in Anglo-Saxon law of the Roman Catholic Church relate to Jewish practices about Easter. All right, all my brothers and sisters, my students, my heirs, please listen. There is no record of Jews in England before the Norman Conquest. All right, so all that Bible thumping you're talking about, you can rest assured that that's not true. All right, soon after William I's conquest, Jewish merchants from Rohan in Normandy began to settle in England. However, Jews were not permitted to own land or to participate in trade except for medicine. They were limited primarily to money lending, as Catholic doctrine held that money lending for interest was a sin of usury. Jews dominated this activity. The earliest immigrants spoke Judeo-French, founded in the Norman dialect. Go further, y'all. The distribution was notable for the even-hang presentation of both Christian and Jewish points of view and for the cognitive tone of exchange. At first, the statute of Jews was not strictly determined. An attempt was made to introduce the continental principle that all Jews were the king's property. You hear that? And a clause to that effect was inserted under King Henry I, son of William the Conqueror, the bastard, and some manuscript of the so-called Legis Edwardus Confessor, the laws of Edward's Confessor. Yes, an Anglo-Saxon Berber. An Anglo-Saxon Berber, because you didn't get an English renowned king to William the Conqueror, and William the Conqueror was the son of King Henry I, all right, who was a Frankish king, not a French king, all right? He was a Jew. However, during the reign 1100 to 1135, a royal charter was granted to Joseph, the chief rabbi of London, and to all his followers under this charter. Jews were permitted to move about the country without paying tolls, to buy or to sell goods and property, to sell their pledges after holding them for a year and a day, to be tried by their peers, and to be sworn on the Torah rather than on the Christian Bible. Special weight was attributed to the Jewish person's oath, which was valid against that of 12 Christians because they represent the King's England and financial matters. Let's read, y'all. The sixth clause of the charter were especially important. It granted Jews the right of movement throughout the kingdom as if they were the king's own property. I didn't write this. All right? I did not write this. You can go to the bullet points right here and get the source. All right? No, but you want to sit here online and crack jokes. One who got an ape on his chat line. Christian Jewish relations in England were disputed under King Stephen. You know who King Stephen was? King Stephen was the brother of Empress Matilda to marry Godfrey, the fifth kind of man Jew, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. All right. Christian-Jewish relations in England were disturbed under King Stephen, who burnt down the house of the Jewish man in Oxford. Some accounts say with the owner ended because he refused to pay a contribution to the king's expenses. It was also during this time that the first recorded blood libel against Jews were brought in the case of William of Northwich, March 1144. While the Crusaders in Germany were attacking the Jews, outbursts against the latter in England were, according to the Jewish chronicles, prevented by King Stephen. All right, Stephen of Blois. Yes, I know who he is. With the restoration of order under Henry II, son of Godfrey, the fifth kind of man Jew. Right, so I was wrong. Henry Fitz, was that? Yeah, I think that is, yeah. Make sure. Henry II, King of England. Yes, that's right. Son of Godfrey, fifth kind of man Jew. Son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. Right? So with the restoration under Henry II, Jews renewed their activity. Within 5 years of extension, Jews were found at London, Oxford, Cambridge, Northwich, Deptford, Bungay, Canterbury, Winchester, Newport, Stafford, where my name comes from, Windsor, and Reading. However, they were not permitted to bury their dead elsewhere than in London until 1177. When we say London, we're not talking about London, we're talking about Londinians. They're spread throughout the country, enabling the king to draw upon them as occasions demanded. He repaid them by demanding notes on the sheriff of the county, who accounted for the payment just made in the half-yearly account on the pipe road. See Aaron of Lincoln. Right, these are facts. We ain't finished. Further restrictions in the statute of jury. Henry III, we know Henry III was the son of John. John had three, Henry II, part so. Henry III was the son of Henry II. Henry II had three sons, Richard, John, and Henry III. And Henry III followed Edward I, Edward II, and Edward III. All right. Henry III passed the statute of jury in 1253, which attempted to stop the construction of synagogues and reinforcing the wearing of Jewish badges rather than accepting fines. A prohibition on Christian servants' work for Jews was to reduce the risk of sexual contact, also prohibited. It remains unclear to what extent this statute was actually implemented by Henry. The laws themselves were following the Catholic Church existing pronouncement. In late 1250, as Henry was not fully controlled, as Henry was not fully control of our government, the Berne asked for limits on the resale of Jewish bonds. Jewish loans became a motivating factor in the following war. Henry's policies up to 1258 of excessive Jewish taxation, anti-Jewish legislation, and propaganda had caused very important and negative changes. later policies of Henry III. Once Simon de Montfort, one of the royal barons, was dead and the rebels were defeated, Henry policy went on to reverse as best as he was able the debts that were reimposed. However, Henry's finances were very weak, and he also wished to pursue the crusade that he had tried to mount in 1250. Parliament refused to comply without legislation to restrict the abuse of Jewish finances, particularly by Christians. In 1269, Henry agreed to limit a perpetual fee, rent, and an end to the sale of Jewish loans to Christians without the permission of the crown, and prohibited on the levy interest on loans purchased by Christians. These were the grievances. These were the grievances that had helped fulfill the wider crisis since 1239. In 1271, he conceded a ban on Jews holding freehold land and again ordered that the previous legislation be enforced. Nevertheless, the policy would not be adequate, and allaying wider fears would quickly resurface under Edward I. Edward I's explosion. Let's go ahead. Edward I is noted for his violence against the Welsh and the Scots, but his reputation concerning the Jews is not well recognized. This has been a matter of controversy for scholars concerning his Jewish history, who've seen a blind spot in work of general history failing to explain his actions and prejudices. For contemporaries, however, his reputation was noted, and the events of the explosion events seen in global context, for instance, in the widest circulated Commendatul Lamentabilis dedicated to him after his death, he was said to be the greater than the pharaohs for expulsion of the jury. Edward can be said to be the first English monarch to use anti-Semitism as an instrument of government policy prior to his reign. Kings had generally tried to preserve their ability to extract taxation from Jews, so had acted to limit violence and other attacks on them. Anti-Semitism had been utilized by opponents to the crown, rather than by the crown itself. But during the reign of Edward I, anti-Semitism was deliberately deployed and developed to the interest of the English state. Edward began to take measures which were designed to focus discontent on Jews or to take credit for acting against them, most significant through the allegations of coin clipping, which labeled the entire Jewish community as criminal. He also appears to have taken a strong interest in specific actions taken against Jews, such as in the case of allegedly blaspheming Jews. Man, you tripping. You definitely tripping. Right? That's one specific point I want to get to. Concerning the Jews in England, right? Concerning the Jews in England. Because we know they were expelled by who? Edward I. And Edward I was the son of Henry III. Let me get to one specific point. Since you claim I'm fluttering, I'm flustered. I'm the best at this, my brother. I'm the best at this. How many of your teachers can sift through information like this? I didn't even write this information. And I'm able to sift through it. Hey, Archbishop, uh, block this gentleman, also Durham. looking for a part where they said the Jews were responsible. If I don't find it, I'm just gonna, I don't find it, I'm just gonna oh, here we go. All right here. Under John 12:15 to 12:16. All right. Under John 12:15, 12:05 to 12:16. And of course, this is John, the one who signed the Magna Carta. Yes, the code, unwritten code of the Berber. As early as 1198, Pope Innocent had written to all Christian princes, including Richard of England, Richard the First, which you know associated with what? Everybody, time immemorial, time at a month, calling upon them to compel the remission of all usury demanded by Jews from Christians. This was rendered the Jewish community's very existence impossible. On 15th of July, 1205, the Pope laid down the principles that Jews were doomed. Did you hear that? Am I fluttering now? On 15th of July, 1205, the Pope, not even us, the Pope laid down the principle that Jews were doomed to perpetual servitude because they crucified Jesus. In England, the secular power soon followed the initiative of the church. John had become indebted. John had become indebted to the Jewish community around Ireland. At first, treated Jews with showed some forbearance. He confirmed the charter of Rabbi Josh and his son and made it apply to all Jews of England. He wrote to a sharp remonstrance to the mayor of London against the attacks that were continually being made upon Jews of that city, alone of all the cities of England. He appointed one Jacob archpriest of all English Jews. All right. See, I know what I'm talking about here. So let's move forward. Goddess, that's diaspora. Let's go back here now. And we know the Scottish diaspora was based upon the Scottish people who immigrated from Scotland and their descendants, who immigrated from Scotland and their descendants in the 17th century. Let's go back to the Edict of Expulsion, because that's where the focal point needs to be, because we know that these people wrote about the history of the Anglo-Saxon Berbers in the Encyclopedia Britannica in the 18th century, at the same time as the Scottish Enlightenment, the Scottish Diaspora, as well as that they were allowed to come back into England in the 17th century. All right, through the descendants of the kings of the Great Britain. All right, starting with King James. All right, but this goes back before King James to sit to Scotland and the first of England. All right, let's go back to what we call the Edict of Expulsion. Edict of Expulsion. Edict of Expulsion was a royal decree issued by Edward I on the 18th July 1290. Okay? Expelling all Jews from the Kingdom of England. The first time a European state is known to have permanently banned their presence. The date was most likely chosen as it was the Jewish holiday, the 9th of Ab, commemorating the destruction of Jerusalem and other disasters that the Jewish people have experienced. Edward told the sheriff of the county that he wanted all Jews expelled before All Saints' Day, November 1st that year. Okay? Jews were allowed to live with cash and for personal possessions by outstanding debt. Homes and other buildings, including synagogues and cemeteries, were forfeited to the king. All right, this is a statement. All right, to the king. While there are no records attacking on Jews during the departure on land, there were acts of piracy in which Jews lost their lives while others were drowned as a result of being forced to cross the English Channel. All right, at an extremely dangerous, stormy time of year, there is evidence from personal names of Jewish refugees settling in Paris and other parts of France, as well as Italy, Spain, Germany, documented taken aboard by the Anglo-Jewish diaspora. Here we go, have been found as far away as Cairo. Jewish properties were sold to the benefit of the crown. Queen Eleanor and selected individuals were given grants of property. Continue. The edict was not an isolated incident, but a culmination of increasing anti-Semitism. In England, during the reign of Henry III and Edward I, anti-Jewish prejudice was used as a political tool, first by opponents of the crown. Did you hear that? And then by Edward, in the state itself, and then by Edward in the state itself. Edward took measures as well to claim credit for the expulsion and to find himself as a protector of Christians against Jews, and was remembered and praised at his death for it. The expulsion had a lasting impact by embedding anti-Semitism into the English culture. The expulsion edict remained in force for the rest of the Middle Ages. Did you hear that? The edict was eventually overturned more than 365 years later during the Protectorate when Oliver Cromwell formally permitted the resettlement of the Jews in England in 1656. Okay, so you're talking about the English Commonwealth. All right, you're talking about from 1290 when the Jews were expelled till 1650 when they were allowed 1656 when they're allowed to come back by Oliver Cromwell. All right, these are all the same descendants. All right, fighting over English estate. How I know it? Let's go back to the war of what we call the Battle of Dunbar. All right, when they were expelled from England. Let's go there. By our ancestors, Henry III, Edward I, Richard, uh, uh, um, John, Henry II, descendants of God, the fifth kind of man too, where I'm sitting down from. So whether I'm reading from Wikipedia or the Encyclopedia Britannica or from any other source, it's not who writing, it's to be able to validate the truth, which I'm doing. All from the Encyclopedia Britannica, written by those who immigrated to Edinburgh, which is in what we call Scotland, all right, which are foreigners. Why? Because they were kicked out because they were foreign. During the reign of Henry III, anti-Jewish prejudice was used as a political tool first by the opponents of the crown and then by Edward in the state itself. Edward took measures after to claim credit for the expulsion, as I said again, to define himself as protector of the Christians against the Jews, because we know that Christianity was adopted under the Dome's Law created by Alfred the Great by way of amalgamating or incorporating all the laws that were created by our ancestors when we were living in different tribal areas in different tribal times. All right, such as the king of the kings of Kent, the kings of Wessex, the kings of Ulster. All right, background. Again, we're talking about the Edict of Expulsion, the background. The first Jewish communities are recorded in England sometime after the Norman conquest in 1066. Remember, in 1065, there are no English renowned kings. They're only Berber kings, all right? And their system of government before it was invaded by William the Conqueror was written on in the Magna Carta, as we've seen as established by those who invaded England in Encyclopedia Britannica, all right? It says, Jews were viewed as being under the direct jurisdiction and property of the king, making them subject to his whim, who could attack or imprison them as he wished, which is going to be the case if you keep acting like you're doing, but without reference to anyone else. A very small number of Jews were wealthy, as Jews were allowed to lend money at interest, while the church forbade Christians from doing so, as this was regarded as a sin of usury. Capital was in short supply of necessary for development, including investment and monastic construction, and facilitating aristocrats to pay heavy taxes to the crown. This was called free and common soca. So Jewish loans played an important economic role, although they were also used to finance consumption, particularly among the outstretched landholding knights, i.e. the barons. Exposure. By the time, or something's going to look better. In 1290, on the 14th of June, Edward I summoned representatives of the Knights of the Sires, the middling landowners, to attend Parliament by the 15th of July. These were also the groups most hostile to Jews and usury. On the 18th of June, Everson secret order to the sheriffs of cities with Jewish residents that the arcade containing records of Jewish debt be sealed. All right. This reason for this is disputed. It could be it could represent preparations for further talents to be paid by a Jewish population, or it could represent a preparatory step for expulsion. Parliament met on the 15th of July. There is no record of parliamentary debate, so it's uncertain whether the expulsion of the Jews were offered by the crown in return for a vote of taxation, or whether Parliament acts for it as a concession. Both views are argued. However, the link between these seems certain, given the evidence of contemporary chronicles and the speed by which orders to expel the Jews of England were made, presumptively after an agreement was reached. The taxation granted by Parliament Everett was very high, probably the highest of the Middle Ages. Additionally, the church later voluntarily agreed to pay taxes of the tenth of the revenue in gratitude. All right, let's go there. So we know they were expelled in 1290. Why? Let's see. Battle of Dunbar. Battle of Dunbar was the only significant field action to campaign of 1296 during the beginning of the First War of Scottish Independence. We know the War of Scottish Independence was when Edward I gave them their independence, but they were expelled in 1290. It says King Edward I had invaded Scotland, all right, this goes back to Stone to Stone, invaded Scotland in March 1296 to punish King John Baliol for his refusal to support English military action in France. After the sack of Berwick upon Tweed, Everett was to complete the conquest of Scotland, remaining in the town for months, supervising and strengthening of his defense. On the 5th of April, he received a message from the King John renouncing his homeland, to which he remarked, "O foolish knave, what folly he commits. If he will not come to us, we will go to him." You read. All right. So in its entirety, you have a battle of Dunbar, right? And a battle of Dunbar, as I said, was in 1296, beginning with the first Scottish independence, all right? First War of Scottish independence. You also got and I'm going to script through this for the sake of time. We got a Battle of Dunbar, what we call 1650. Just look at that. The Battle of Dunbar was fought between the English New Model Army under Oliver Cromwell and the Scottish Army commanded by David Leslie on the 3rd of September 1650 near Dunbar, Scotland. The battle resulted in a decisive victory for the English. It was the first major battle in 1650 invasion of Scotland, which was triggered by Scotland's acceptance of Charles II as King of Britain after the beheading of his father, Charles I, on the 13th of January, 1649. Do y'all hear this? You hear this? After Charles I After Charles I's execution, the English won Parliament, i.e., a Commonwealth, i.e., a republic, which you have now. It says after Charles I's execution, the English won Parliament, established a Republican Commonwealth in England. When their erstwhile ally Scotland recognized Charles II as the King of all Britain on the 1st of May in 1650, okay, and began recruiting an army to support him, the English dispatched a new model army under the command of Oliver Cromwell. The army crossed into Scotland on the 22nd of July with a force of over 16,000 men. The Scots withdrew to Edinburgh, shipping the land of provisions. Cromwell attempted to draw the Scots out into a set piece battle, but they resisted, and Cromwell was unable to break through their defensive line. This is called the English Civil War. All right, this is called the English Civil War. So we see the Battle of Dunbar in 1290 and 1650 was resulted from the Edict of Expulsion of the Jews by Edward I, and then they were allowed to come back by Oliver Cromwell in 1650. All this was under a Commonwealth. Why? Because the Commonwealth comes from the English taking over our state. How? Let's prove this. Let's prove it. Union of the Crowns. All right? Union of the Crown. Yeah, it's Wikipedia, but yeah, it's a fact. The Union of the Crown was an extension of King James VI of Scotland to the throne of England as James I and the practical unification of some functions, so that the overseeing of diplomacy of the two separate realms under a single individual on the 21st of March, 1603. It followed the death of James' cousin, the Elizabeth I of England, the last monarch of the Tudor dynasty. All right, did everybody understand that? The Union of the Crown was an extension of James VI of Scotland to the throne of the Kingdom of England as James I, and the practical unification of some functions, such as overseas diplomacy of the two separate realms under a single individual on the 24th of March, 1603, and the following death of James' cousin Elizabeth I of England, the last monarch of Tudor. She was a part of the House of Tudor, the daughter of Henry VIII, the son of Henry VII, the founder of the House of Tudor. All right. So we see going back to the Battle of Dunbar of 1290 and the Battle of Dunbar of 1650, we see that was the era of when the Jews, i.e., the Ashkenazi Jews, were expelled from our domain, not just over there in what they call the Europe continent, but as well as over here, because they came over here as well in the 18th century to what we call the Scottish diaspora or the Scottish Enlightenment, which was a result of the information that they gathered amongst themselves. All right, amongst themselves. The union was a personal and dynastic, with the crown of England and the crown of Scotland remaining both distinct and separate despite James' best effort to create a new imperial throne. England and Scotland continue as two separate states sharing a monarch who directed their domestic and foreign policies along with Ireland. Until the Acts of Union of 1707, i.e. Great Britain, during the reign of the last Stuart monarch, Queen Anne, however, there was a Republican interregnum in 1650. Did y'all hear that? During which the tender of union under Oliver Cromwell created the Commonwealth of England and Scotland, which ended with the Stuart Restoration, which also allowed those Jews to come back into our estate. All right? These are straight, undilutable facts. Let's go back to more proof. More proof. The thistle and the rose. The thistle and the rose. The Thistle in the Rose is a Scottish poem composed by William Dunbar to mark the wedding in August 1503 of King James IV. All right? We ain't talking about King James VI. We talk about King James IV of Scotland to Princess Margaret Tudor of England. In 1503, you had the Union of the Crown in 1503. You had the Treaty of Union in 1707, called the Treaty of Union of Great Britain. Prior to that, it was king, separate government. All right, separate government. So we see the poem takes the form of a dream. All right, in which Margaret is represented by a rose. James is represented by variously by a lion, an eagle, and a thistle. All right. When you go back to Edinburgh, Encyclopedia Britannica, what do you have there on the symbol of Edinburgh Encyclopedia? A thistle, right? A thistle. The episode of the poem presents an allegorical King James view of himself and of his kingdom. Princess Margaret received lavish praises for her beauty, virtue, and high birth. All right, let's break this down, y'all. The text of the poem is found only in the Bantaline manuscript. It's also called the Thistle and the Rose. Here's where the truth come out, y'all. Here's where the truth come out. Historical context. The marriage of James IV of King of Scots and Margaret Tudor, the eldest daughter of Henry VII, the founder of the House of Tudor, had begun a treaty of perpetual peace of 1502. This treaty was intended to effect a reconciliation between the Kingdom of Scotland and England, which had been at war intermittently since 1296. We knew about 1296. We already just talked about 1296. All right, when the Jews were expelled from England. Let's go back to it. Battle of Dunbar, 1296. Scottish independence. All right, so we're dealing with the Treaty of Perpetual Peace in 1502 between Henry VII of the House of Tudors, which is the cadet branch, which took over the cadet branch of the Lancasters and the Yorks, which are cadet branches of the Plantagenet crown, of the Angevin crown, which came from what we call the Plantagenet crown, which was established by Godfrey the Fifth Calavan Jew, son of Fulk, ruler of Jerusalem. All right, so I'm not grabbing that straw, brother. The marriage of King James IV, King of Scots, and Margaret Tudor, the eldest daughter of Henry VII of England, had been agreed in a Treaty of Perpetual Peace in 1502. Let's check out this Treaty of Perpetual Peace. The Treaty of Perpetual Peace was signed by King James III, King James IV of Scotland, and Henry VII of England in 1502. It agreed to end the intermediate warfare between Scotland and England, which had been waged over the previous 200 years, and although it failed in this respect, as hostilities continued intermittently through the 16th century, it led to the Union of the Crown 101 years later. Now, what was the Union of the Crown? The Union of the Crown in 1503, because the Scottish, i.e. the Jews or the British Israelites, had taken over our state. All right? They took over our state. It's right here. The Treaty of Perpetual Peace between King James IV of Scotland, not the King of England. You didn't get to the King of England until King James VI, and Henry VII, the de facto King of England, who was from the House of Tudor. All right? The treaty would not be successful establishing peace. 10 years after the marriage of James and Margaret, Scotland and England aligning themselves with opposing alliances in the War of League of Cambrai. The subsequent campaign ended with James' death and Scots' defeat at Flodden. The Arthur William Dunbar was a prolific poet who had been employed at the Scots Royal Court since at least the 1500s. His work was often recorded state events. The thistle has first appeared in Scottish iconography on the coins of King James III. His son, successor King James IV, continued its use as a symbol of the Scottish monarchy. A rose-colored red and white had been adopted as a dynastic symbol by Henry VII, who had seized the throne of England in 1485. It represented a union of the Lancastrian and the Yorkist factions of the Plantagenet dynasty, which had fought a series of wars for the control of English throne before being succeeded by Henry VII of the House of Lancaster, of the House of York, part south, at the House of Tudor. A red rose was the badge of the Lancaster, and a white rose was the badge of the Yorkists. All right? These are facts. All right, so let's go ahead. War of the Roses. The War of the Roses, known at the time in the following centuries as the Civil War, were a series of civil wars fought over control over the English throne from 1455 to 1487. All right? The war was fought between supporters of the House of Lancaster and the House of York, two rival cadet branches of the Royal House of Plantagenet. All right? The conflict resulted in the end of the Lancaster's male line in 1471, enabling the Tudor family to inherit their claim to the throne through the female line. Conflicts was largely brought to an end upon the union of the two houses through the marriage created under the Tudor dynasty started by Henry VII. All right? These are facts as I come to my close. Henry VII, founder of the House of Tudors. Henry VII was King of England and Lord of Ireland from his seizure of the crown on the 22nd of August of 1485 until his death 1509. He was the first minor of the House of Tudors. This is how King James got their start, all right, through the Union of the Crown and then the Treaty of Union of 1707. As a result of the Treaty of Peace, perpetual peace between Henry IV and King James VII, King Henry VII, which we're talking about now. And how did he get his start? Let's see. I heard. To secure his hold on the throne, Henry declared himself king by right of conquest, retroactively from the 21st of August, 1485, the day before Bosworth fell. Thus, anyone who had fought for Richard against him would be guilty of treason. Henry can legally confiscate the lands and property of Richard III while restoring his own. Henry spared Richard's nephew, designated heir John de la Pole, Earl of Lincoln, and made the Yorkshire heiress Margaret of Plantagenet Countess of Salisbury Sejour. He took care not to address the barons of Summer in Parliament until after his coronation, which took place at Westminster Abbey, which was established in the 9th century, 950, by Hope Dunstan, for who King Edward the people, for what the English Bentown reform, for what the reformation of the Christian church, which was caused, which was forced upon us by the Gregorian mission by Pope Gregory I in the 7th century. All right, these are facts. So based upon everything we just read on Wikipedia in regards to the expulsion of the Jews, which are the Ashkenazi Jews, going back to those who portrayed in the biblical portrayal in that Bible, were actually the ones who are living and existing today in the world that we're supposed to be living in, right? Which they stole from us. So I'll show you that how they stole our state by one statute and New Jersey by a statute, because New Jersey represents the crown and the crown represents the English throne. And close. You make this up. If this was a myth, and if I'm making all this up, as also Drew will say I am, then explain this. Explain this. Alienation of freehold, status quo towards terrum. From after March 18th, 1795, any freeholder, all right, any person having a fief may give, sell, or alien the real estate whereof he is, or at any time shall be seized and fee simple or part thereof at his pleasure, and such only purchaser or alienee shall hold the same free of any tenure or service to the donor or the donor, seller, or aliener. That means that all the states that were under the Queen Imperatrix are now subject to what we call fee and simple. Let's see why. These are statutes, New Jersey. And this is a myth. I'm making this up. Whenever any conveyance, will, or instrument or writing shall have to be made whereby any grantee, devisee, or other person should become seized in law or in equity of such an estate and real estate as under the statute of 13th of every the first called the statutes of Ventura. All right, what we call the donuts conditionalibus would have been held in the state in detail or any type of character. Such conveyance, will, or instrument shall vest in the state now and be simple, and such grantee, devisee, or other person. So this lets you know they stole our state. Why? Let's go to the actual statute. And I'm going to use Wikipedia. Because now I showed you the legislation, Mr. Oso Duro, whatever your name is, but I'm going to use Wikipedia to validate the legislation. The Donuts Conditionalibus or the Estates of Tell Act of 1285 in New Jersey, not over where you at, but in New Jersey, is a chapter of the English Statute of Westminster. So what in the hell is this statute doing in New Jersey? Can you answer that? No, you cannot. Greeting, brothers, Dever from the House of Dever. Can you explain that? No. Why? Because you don't have a right in this Intel estate. Why? Because Intel estates are crown estates called Crown Land, and Crown Land is Intel. Why? Because Crown Land is personified by the king. It's a natural person. Come on, man. Don't play with me. So it said, the Darnicus Business was an English statute passed in 1285. It is 2024 in your year and 2974 in the Berber year. And we know the law that was governed by the Berbers, whose system of government was written by or written, and the Magna Carta, which was the uncoded law constitution that they used. It said originated from the law of those who were the heirs, which was something to what we call intel estate. What is intel estate? So we know this here. English common law. English common law, fee tell, intels, or in Scottish law, televide or telelide is a form of trust established by a deed or settlement that restricts the sale of inheritance of the estate and real property and prevents that property from being sold, divided by will, or otherwise alienated by a tenant in possession, and instead calls it into pass by what? By operation of law. All right. Contrast to what we call fee simple. And fee simple deeds possessed of which have unrestricted title to the land but cannot buy or sell. Why? Because what it said. Fee tail deeds are in contrast to fee simple deeds, possessors of which have an unrestricted title to the property and are empowered to bequeath or dispose of it as they wish, although it may be subject to what? The allodial title of the minor of the governing body with the power of eminent domain. All right? We talked about that. Y'all. All right, so that's intel. Let's go back here. Condone the Smith's conditional bus. Let's go to Queen and Taurus and close. Queen and Taurus. Right, that's up. Queen of Taurus is a statute passed by a parliament in England in 1290 during the reign of Edward I. The same one we're talking about. To prevent tenants from alienating their land to others by substitution, instead requiring all tenants who wish to alienate their land to do so by substitution. All right. The statute, along with the companion quo warranto, or order to show cause how you was able to substitute the land from the heirs by way of fee simple instead of what we call intel estate. All right. Very important. Why? We can do that before. Why? Because there was no king, and there's no king, there's no body politics, and no body politics, there's no existence. How? We're going to close out with this last statute. Not from Wikipedia, but from legislation. Since he claimed there is no king. Let me see you pull a statue out of your hat in regards to the king. Let me see you do this. Also, Bureau. Certain tenures and holdings turn to free and common soakers. The tenures of honors, manors, lands, tenants, or hereditary of this or of a state of inheritance at the common law held of the King of England or any other person or body politic or corporate at any time before July 4th, 1776, and declared by Section 3 an act concerning tenures passed February 18th, 1795. That's 1795, y'all. 1790, the United States just got their start to be turned into holding and freeing common soakers from the time of their creation forever thereafter, and should continue to be held and free in common soakers, discharged of all tenure charges and instances enumerated in said Section 3. Let's qualify it even more. New Jersey by statute, Title 46 property gifts, grants, conveyances by the state of New Jersey are now elodial. That's statute, y'all. Gift, grants, conveyances by state is elodial. All grants, grants, or conveyances made prior to July 4th, 1776. This is the year the colonies, now called the states, now called United States of America, declared their independence from the King of Great Britain, not from the King of England. Why? Because it said all gifts, grants, or conveyances made prior to and after July 4th, 1776 of any state of inheritance by a letter patent under the great seal of the state of New Jersey or any other manner by the state of New Jersey, by their legislators thereof, or by their commissioners, or by their agents, or forfeit the state, or by any other lawful competent authority under the state, shall be and remain allodial and not feudal, and shall forever be construed and continue to be free and pure allodium only, forever discharged of all feudal tenures and incidents thereof, and all other services whatsoever. That's statute. Let's go back to Wikipedia. Let's go back to Wikipedia. Allodium. Allodium. Loaded title constitute ownership of real property, land, building, and fixtures. This brother talking about irrevocable trust. Man, you don't have a clue about trust law. You buggy. Loaded title constitute ownership of real property, not some interest in some property, but an equitable interest in property, right? And that only falls in lieu of what we call eminent domain, because the interest in property legally is eminent domain. Equitable interest in property is we call allodium, all right? Because if it's eminent domain, then that's done by what we call acquisition, prescription, compulsory, conquest, all right? We don't have a clue about what you talk about. The allodial title constitutes ownership of real property, land, building, and fixtures that are independent of any superior landlord. Okay, the allodial title is related to the concept of land held in allodium or land ownership by occupancy and defense of the land. So we just read a statute from New Jersey that says the land is allodial, and allodial means free and clear from any ownership. Then how in the hell is America own the land allodial? Because they don't. Let's prove it. Most property ownership in common law jurisdiction is fee and simple. Did you hear that? Fee and simple. I didn't say allodial. In the United States, the land is subject to eminent domain. All right? Why? Because the land has to ceded. Why? Because ain't no heirs. When there ain't no heirs, it becomes interstate. When it becomes interstate, it is cheat. When it is cheat, it's subject to what we call eminent domain power, which is taking private property for public use to what we call prescription, which is an easement, a non-possessory use, and property that you do not own. All right? So most property in the United States is through eminent domain, and in the United States is through the states, through eminent domain power of the state by federal, state, and local government, and subject to the imposition of encumbrances, which are called taxes. And this is why you have an escrow account or a trust account created by brokers who call escrow agents or called escrow, what we call stakeholders for the shareholders or the stockholders who are called the state. So as we can see, land held of the crown in England and Wales and other jurisdictions is called Commonwealth realm. Why? Because it's owned by the crown. What is the crown? This man bugging. You don't know what you're looking at. How does this relate to Section 8 property? What the hell is a Section 8? We're talking about lodial property. So Section 8 is irrelevant right now. It's irrelevant, whatever you read it from. Why? Because the crown. Yes, we're gonna close out on this. The crown broadly represents the state in all aspects within the jurisprudence of the Commonwealth realms and their subdivisions such as crown dependencies, overseas territories, provinces, or states. The term can be used to refer to offices of the monarchy or the monarchy as an institution, i.e. corporation, to the rule of law, i.e. operation of law, or to the functions of the executive, i.e. or the legislative, or the judicial branch, either called king and parliament or king and bench. All right? The concept of the crown. The concept of the crown as a corporation soul developed first in the Kingdom of England as the separation of the physical crown and property of the kingdom from the personal property of the minor. Okay? What's the corporation soul? Corporation soul is a legal entity consisting of a single soul, natural person. This structure allows corporations to pass without interruption from an office holder to the next, given the position, legal continuity, subsequent office holders of their identical what? Predecessors. All right, don't play with me. And in closing, what's the concept of the crown? The concept of the crown took form on the feudal system, though not used this way in all countries that had the system. In England, all rights and privileges were ultimately bestowed by the ruler. Land, for instance, was granted by the crown to lords in exchange for feudal services, which we call free and common soakers. In turn, it granted less land to lesser lords. One exception was common soakers. Owners of the land held a soakers held is subject only to the crown. When such land becomes ceded interstate ownerless, it automatically ceded to what? The crown. Not the state of New Jersey as Bonavicatini, but to the crown. Why? Because the exceedment power was a royal prerogative of the crown. All right? A royal prerogative of the crown. All right? So in closing, let's prove that New Jersey is the crown. Just can't come up here and just argue in the chat. You think you got proof? We invite you to the platform. All right, but if you come, you got to come on the intelligent tone and show some decor. All right. If not, then we're not only not going to allow you to come on the channel, but we're going to block you from this chat line, i.e., our platform, i.e., our church, because you're not a member of the English church, i.e., Anglo-Saxon Beverage Church. And with that, we'll close out on this one. New Jersey Provincial Council was the upper house of the New Jersey legislation under colonial rule. We know colonial rule means your crown colony because when George Carteret and John Berkeley gave back their charters back to the grantor who gave it to them, that's called a clear chain of title, right? Not an indefeasible title, meaning that you can trace it to the original grantor. Not like you do in a fee simple, but you have an abstract title done by a property abstract search by a broker, i.e., an attorney. All right, these are facts. History. The Provincial Council was established in 1702 upon the surrender by the properties of East Jersey and West Jersey of the right of government to Queen Anne. Anne's government, and my mama named Betty Ann. Government united two colonies of the province of New Jersey, a royal colony established a new system of government called what? The crown. And it's what? Indefinite. Where was it sitting at? Burlington and First Amboy, where we sit now. So there, I rest my case. So all my brothers and my sisters, all my elders, our children, please understand how important it is to know who you are and understand who you are from a concrete perspective. Because if you don't, you're gonna have people like Oso Duro trying to break an argument when it's presumptuous at best. All right? It's presumptuous at best. So all those at the sound of my voice, please understand how important it is. And I know it's very important to you because you're sitting here listening. And the fact that you didn't say anything in the comments or the chat, let me know that you're listening. Not like this fool also thorough. So in that respect, I greeted you as I greeted you in peace and love.